Hello, good day to one and all. This is Miss A. Krishna Sundar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KAHM Unity Women's College, Manjeri. Today we are going to discuss the terms Three Unities and Tragic Hero from Module 1 of the paper Appreciating Drama. We had already covered two video lectures as part 1 and part 2, which had given a detailed explanation of the initial terms in module 1. So here we go with part 3. In part 2, we had already covered the constituent parts of a drama. So here we go with the next term, three unities. Now, three unities, this is a concept which is an inevitable part of a drama. Now, the three unities are, one is the unity of action, then comes unity of place, and the last one is unity of time. So now let us explain these three terms. Now these three unities are very important when we discuss the context of a drama. So what do you mean by unity of action? Unity of action means there should be one main action for the play, which means there should only be one single action running throughout the play. Suppose if the theme is related to something, the entire plot should cover the very same theme without moving into other irrelevant topics. So there shouldn't be any kind of digression, or there should not be any kind of subplots. So subplots are plots which are very much different from the main plot, but they would be having some kind of similarities, but they would be two totally different stories with different characters. So the subplot will be having minor characterizations, but still this subplot can be a digression or a deviation to the main plot. This is what Aristotle says. Now, this is what Aristotle stated in connection with Greek theatre. But today, when we analyze the plays which are performed, this is not something which can be completely used. Even if you look at some of the Shakespearean plays, this unity of action was not completely followed. If you look at the drama written by Shakespeare, which is titled as King Lear, we can see there is a secondary plot happening here. There is a subplot. Now, on one side, the main plot is about the situations of the king, whose name is Lear. At the same time, there is a subplot which carries almost the same theme but with different characters. So the subplot is about a nobleman whose name is Gloucester. Now, just like King Lear suffers at the hands of his daughters, Gloucester too suffers at the hands of his son. So there is a similarity here, but there are different characters. There is a subplot coming here, a minor plot. Now, Aristotle was totally against this subplot, but in today's world, we can see these subplots in many plays written by many. Now, moving on to the second one, unity of place. Now, unity of place suggests that there should be only one single physical space. Now, by physical space, it means the location where the story is happening. So, it should not compress geography. Stage should not represent more than one place, which means the entire story should happen within the same location. Now, if you look at some movies today, you can see there are different locations which are coming together in one single movie. Even in the case of plays or drama, you can see there are different locations which are utilized in today's world. But if you go back to the Greek theatre, this was not allowed, or this was not really a correct structured form of a drama. So, if a story is happening from Greece, if the location is Greece, the entire play should be having Greece as its location. It should not move to England, it should not then move to Italy, it should not then move to India. So, you can't actually choose different locations. The entire story should happen from one single location because this will give a unified structure for the play. This is what Aristotle believed in. Maybe he was trying to suggest this because the time when he survived, bringing too many locations into one single stage was not an easy task. But in today's world, with a lot of technical assistance, it is possible. At one point, you can show the stage setting as a place in England. After 20 minutes, you can show the very same stage set in a different location, maybe in New Zealand or Australia. So, this is possible today, but this was not really possible in those days. And maybe this is the reason why Aristotle says there should be only one single location for the play. Now, the last one is unity of time. Now, unity of time means the play should take place within 24 hours, which means it should start and it should finish within one revolution of the sun around the earth, which is actually one single day. So it should not spread across days or months or years because it will take away the unified action of the play. So these three are considered as the three unities, the most important part in a drama. Now, if you look at poetics, it was only unity of action which was suggested by Aristotle. So the question here is, who brought unity of place and unity of time into the structure of drama? So it is not very clear whether this was put forward by Aristotle or whether put forward by someone else, maybe from Greece itself. It is not really clear, but Aristotle speaks only about unity of action in poetics. So now moving on to the next part, here comes another important area in drama, which is the tragic hero, who is otherwise known as an Aristotelian hero, because Aristotle states a few characteristics necessary for the tragic hero. A tragic hero becomes a tragic hero only if he is possessing these essential qualities. Again, I'm repeating the very same point that today's tragic hero can be very, very different from this concept. So let's analyze how Aristotle defines this concept. The hero of the play should be of noble birth, which means he should be a king or a noble. Now, this is the very first point that Aristotle brings in. He should be someone having a position in society. Only then you can emphasize the depth of the tragedy. Now, the hero receives an undeserved misfortune. Misfortune is something that happens to the character in a negative way. Now, these misfortunes should emerge from his own actions, which means it would not be something destined by fate, but it should be something created by the character himself. And here comes another term, hamartia, a tragic flow. So this hero should possess this hamartia, which means the hero should possess a tragic flow. Now, tragic flow means a simple mistake. So the hero commits a very simple mistake, and this mistake becomes a reason for the downfall of the hero. Now, to make you understand this, I am bringing the example of an old Malayalam movie. It's a very old movie which was released in the year 1989, a Mohanlal movie which is titled as Kireetam. If you look at this movie, Mohanlal's character is named as Sethu Madhavan, the son of Tilagan. Tilagan again is a police officer. Now, Mohanlal is waiting to be appointed as a police officer just like his father. So he is waiting the result of the test, and his father has pinned a lot of hopes in his son. When things stand in such a way, suddenly something happens. The hero finds his own father thrashed and beaten up by a criminal in the streets. If you remember the story, the criminal is Kirikaran Jose. Now, looking at this, the hero, out of an impulsive action, as a reflex action, he goes and attacks the criminal during the process of rescuing his father. Nobody has invited him, but he goes and he rescues his father as an impulsive action. As a result of this, he kills the criminal and he himself is getting imprisoned. So the son who was going to be a police officer, is now imprisoned in the jail and he is branded as a criminal. So, from here onwards, the downfall of the hero begins. He is completely avoided from all people. The society neglects him. He has a lover, the role played by Parvati. He loses his lover. He loses everything in his life just because of this one impulsive decision. Now, this is what you call as the tragic flow. It is an impulsive kind of thing. Sometimes you do certain things in anger. Sometimes you do certain things out of passion. So, this is a simple mistake which can happen to any human being. It can happen to me and it can happen to you. And that is where the audience can identify with this tragic flow. So, this hero should possess this simple mistake in his character. Now, this is otherwise known as an error of judgment because without thinking, you are doing something. Now, this is a common human tendency. Now, this misfortune should evoke pity and fear. If you remember the previous slides, the main purpose of a tragedy is catharsis, which means the purgation of emotion. It should evoke pity and fear in the audience. So he should neither be too good or too bad. He should be eminently good. At the same time, he should not be completely perfect. Now, there are three categories that Aristotle is pointing at here. Now, he says that the hero should not be a completely perfect man. Imagine if the hero is a perfect good man. When this perfect good man falls from happiness to misery, what will be the reaction of the audience? Now, see, as human beings, we all believe in a system, a natural system, a world of poetic justice, right? We all believe that if you do good things, we will be rewarded, and if you do bad things, you would be punished. So, this is a common set of belief that we all depend on, irrespective of the culture or the religion in which we are born into. So, if a perfectly fine man is getting into misery, we all will lose faith in the system of justice in this world. So, that is why Aristotle says he shouldn't be a perfectly good man. He should only be an ordinary good man having some good qualities like us. Only then the audience can identify with this hero. The second thing is he shouldn't be a bad man. Because if he is a bad man who is falling from happiness to misery, what would be the reaction of the audience? Now imagine when the villains are getting thrashed at the end of the story, what is the reaction that we have? When the villains are exposed or when the villains are getting killed at the end of the story, we are happy about it, right? Because we feel that he or she deserves this plight. So, if a bad man is falling from happiness to misery, we won't have the purgation of emotion by pity and fear. Instead, we would only be happy about this tragedy. So it is not happiness that should come out of a tragedy, right? From a tragedy, tragic emotions should come out. So if it is a very bad man falling from happiness to misery, we will only be having satisfaction and happiness. So that would be a bad choice. Again, a bad man falling from misery to happiness. It's just the opposite. If a bad man is falling from misery to happiness, now see the ending would be a happy ending, which means it is not a tragedy at all. And on the second part, if a bad man is falling from misery to happiness, imagine we all believe that if you do bad things, you will be punished. And if a bad man is moving from misery to happiness, this is just a contradictory statement for that, which means we will again lose the belief in this system, in this world. So that is also a bad choice. Now, again, there is another category which Aristotle is not mentioning, that is a perfect good man. A perfect good man falling from misery to happiness. Now, again, when it ends with happiness, there is no point here in discussing it in connection with a tragedy, because when the ending is happy, it is not a tragedy at all. So, that could be the reason why Aristotle completely ignores that part. So, coming back to the qualities of this Aristotelian hero, this is just a repetitive point which we had already discussed in the previous slide. So, the tragic hero should be an eminently good man, not too good but not too bad, an ordinary kind of man. He should be coming from a noble family, having some kind of a position in the society. He should be possessing hamartia, means some kind of a weakness or some kind of a minor mistake in his character. And as a result of this hamartia, misfortune happens, the downfall happens. And when the downfall is portrayed, the hero suffers, and as a result, we can see pity and fear is evoked. So, in totality, he should be essentially a human kind of person or having human quality, as you can say. Now, the best example from the play would be Oedipus Rex, which I have mentioned in the previous slide. Oedipus Rex, as you can see, I don't know how many of you have gone through the story of Oedipus, but as literature student, definitely you should know the story of Oedipus Rex. Now, Oedipus kills his father and marries his mother. So, at the end of the story, at the end of the play, he comes to the realization, he discovers the truth that he has killed his father and married his mother. So, this comes as a shocking news, and he gets into a mode of suffering. He actually blinds himself and tries to kill himself. So, a lot of suffering, pity, fear, these kind of things are evoked, and this is how this drama ends, by giving a heavy heart for the audience. So, in order to identify with the hero, he should have some human qualities. He shouldn't be like a superhuman kind of character. Now, if someone is a superhuman character, definitely we will not be able to identify with those people. We can only identify with ordinary people because we are ordinary human beings. So he should be essentially human in nature. So now we are moving on to the term hamartia. Now, hamartia, we had already discussed that it is a tragic flaw. It is a minor mistake that the hero makes. So, hamartia has been defined by different people because there had been a lot of controversies and debates based on that. Now, A.C. Bradley, who is a literary scholar, an English literary scholar who has done a lot of investigation into Shakespearean tragedies, interpreted this term as tragic flaw. So, some kind of a weakness in the character of the hero. At the same time, remember, it is not a moral defect. It doesn't mean that the hero is weak. It doesn't mean that the hero is bad. It is just an error of judgment. Because sometimes we all commit blunders out of ignorance. Now, sometimes when you take hasty decisions, the decisions can go wrong, right? Sometimes when you make decisions in a passionate situation, the decision can again go wrong. Sometimes when you are too much in anger and when you make a decision, your decision cannot be right. So these are very common things which might have happened to each one of us, and the very same thing is happening here to the hero. So the entire tragedy should emerge from this minor flaw. So this person would be a good character, but because of a minor flaw, he is finally getting into the mode of suffering and downfall. So it is not to be considered as a moral drawback. So some of the best examples that I can give you would be, one is Ned Stark. So, if you're familiar with the great epic series Game of Thrones, you would know this character. Now, if you are a person who hasn't watched Game of Thrones, I would recommend or I would suggest that you should watch it. It is a very long epic series. It runs into 8 seasons with more than 80 plus episodes, but still, it is worth the watch. So, the character Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, if you look at Ned Stark's character, he is a very good character. He is a very noble kind of man. He is having a helping mentality. He is very honest. But the minor defect that he is having here is that he is dangerously honest because he is not keeping quiet even in dangerous situations. He is opening up and speaking the truth even in dangerous circumstances. And it is this dangerous honesty. Now, honesty is actually a very good character, right? But even when honesty comes in a wrong circumstance, it can become a tragic flaw. So Ned Stark is too honest, and it is this honesty which actually costs him the price of his life. He gets killed. So that was actually tragic. Now, coming to the next one, Shakespeare's Macbeth. If you look at the character of Macbeth, again, he is a tragic character. Now, what is a hamartia in Macbeth's character? Now, the defect in Macbeth's character was he was too ambitious. His vaulting ambition is the reason behind his downfall. He is too ambitious that he wants to become the king, that he kills the previous king of Scotland. So you can see vaulting ambition becomes the tragic flow of Macbeth. If you look at another character, Achilles, it is the pride of Achilles which is creating the downfall for him. Again, another example from the movie Harry Potter. Harry Potter gets into tragedy for a number of times, though it doesn't become completely tragic. If you look at the different series, it cannot be called completely tragic. Okay, so this is not exactly a correct example, but I'm telling you, I'm quoting from one movie example so that you would be able to connect with it easily. Now, if you look at the character of Harry Potter, he has a helping mentality and he often goes into an extra mile to help and serve others. So it is this helping mentality which is creating trouble for him. He gets into all troubles because of his helping mentality. So there should be some kind of a weakness which is actually creating or setting the mood for downfall for the character. So, in a nutshell, Aristotle's hero is not completely unacceptable. Now, there are lots of qualities that you can pick when you discuss a tragic hero, even today, but in today's world, a tragic hero is very different from what Aristotle has thought about it. Because in today's world, you see tragic heroes who are not kings or queens, tragic heroes who are not noblemen. We see very ordinary people as tragic heroes. So, this is one great difference that you can see when you analyze it with the contemporary world. But his concepts of a tragic hero is limited because it is not an extended version that you can see. Maybe he lived thousands of years before and he was just talking about the Greek theater. But in today's world, you have different kinds of theaters from different parts of the world. So if you look at this tragic hero alone, the vision of Aristotle looks very limited. Now, again, there are so many examples which are proving the fact that a tragic hero can even be saints. Now, the best example would be T.S. Eliot's play Murder in the Cathedral. Now, this play is about a saint. So, the tragic hero is a saint here. Now, the saint gets killed at the end of the drama. So, we can see that a tragic hero need not be a king or a nobleman. Even a saint can be a tragic hero. So, see, with the passage of time, even the definitions of a tragic hero can change. Again, Shakespeare has proved that tragic hero can be villains too. If you look at Macbeth, now Macbeth is not a very bad character, but in a certain perspective, he is very villainous because he goes to the extent of killing the king, the existing king, because he is too ambitious and he wants to become the king. So even villains can become heroes or tragic heroes. So, if you look at these examples, sometimes we are far away from the definitions given by Aristotle in connection with the tragic hero. So, with this, we come to the end of part 3. So, thank you very much for your patient listening. If you have got any queries, suggestions, or if you need more assistance, please do not hesitate to connect with me in my email ID. So, thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.